Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back, not to the battlefield or the emperor's palace, but to the very streets of ancient Rome at the height of its power. You're not a senator or a gladiator tonight, you're just you, and you've just arrived. The first thing that hits you isn't the grandeur of the marble temples, not yet. It's the smell, a complex, layered, and utterly overwhelming wall of odor that is the true essence of a city with over 1 million people crammed into a space meant for a fraction of that. You can taste the air, thick with the smoke of 1,000 cooking fires, the dusty tang of sun-baked stone, the sweet, cloying scent of decaying flowers and offerings left at shrines, and underneath it all, something less poetic, something organic and pungent. This is the reality of urban life before sanitation, before deodorant, before the concept of personal space included a personal bubble of freshness. You probably won't survive a week here without catching some foul ailment, but we're just visiting, and your immune system is safely in the 21st century. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're there, feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where in the world this little community is drifting off. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of the Suburra, one of Rome's most densely populated and famously aromatic districts. The narrow streets are a chaotic symphony of life. Above you, rickety wooden balconies from multi-story insulae. The ancient apartment blocks seem to almost kiss across the alleyway, casting everything in a perpetual, shadowy twilight. Lines of laundry, already hinting at our main topic, flap limply in the humid air, not doing much to dry and doing even less to improve the scent profile of the neighborhood. The ground beneath your feet isn't a clean, paved path. It's a treacherous mix of stone and compacted dirt, made slippery by a trickle of water and other, less identifiable liquids making its way down the central gutter. This is your introduction to the eternal city, and it is anything but sterile. You take a hesitant breath, and your nose tries and fails to parse the components. There's the unmistakable barnyard scent of animal dung from the donkeys and mules being used as pack animals, from the occasional chicken or goat being led to market, even from the more exotic sacrifices being hauled towards the forums. There's the salty, metallic smell of blood from the nearby butcher's stall, the earthy rot of vegetables past their prime tossed into the street, and the warm, yeasty aroma of bread from a bakery a few doors down. It's not all bad, in fact, some of it is downright pleasant, but it's the sheer intensity, the overwhelming there-ness of it all, that is so jarring. This is a world where smells aren't background notes, they are active, aggressive participants in daily life. And then there's the people. You are jostled by a throng of citizens, slaves, and merchants. A well-dressed patrician, nose wrinkled, holds a small bouquet of herbs or a perfumed ball to his face. As his litter-bearers muscle their way through the crowd, he understands the assignment. Everyone here is a contributor to this grand olfactory symphony. The worker sweating in the sun, the fishmonger hawking his wares, the tannery whose acrid stench wafts from a side street. It all mingles together into one great, communal atmosphere. You are breathing in the literal essence of Rome, a cocktail of humanity, industry, and life that is as fascinating as it is foul. Historians still argue whether the average Roman citizen even noticed the smell anymore, having become completely anosmic to it through constant exposure, or if it was a perpetual low-grade annoyance. The price of doing business in the greatest city on earth. You navigate past a crowded cookshop, where a large pot of something hearty and spiced is bubbling away, and the smell is actually welcoming. But right next to it, the open doorway of a cramped apartment building releases a wave of stuffy, lived-in air, the smell of old food, unwashed bodies, and cheap lamp oil. This is the reality for most. The famous Roman aqueducts brought fresh water into the city, an engineering marvel that ended up at magnificent public fountains and the baths of the wealthy. But for the common person living in a tiny top-floor apartment with no plumbing, a bucket of that water was a precious commodity not to be wasted on frivolous things like daily laundering. You're starting to see the problem, aren't you? The need, in a city this crowded, this sweaty, this fragrant. Keeping your tunic and toga presentable wasn't a matter of vanity. It was a social and professional necessity. But how? The answer isn't going to be a simple one, and it's going to lead us down some very interesting, aromatic pathways of its own. You pause for a moment, leaning against a sun-warmed wall, and watch the flow of the city. A slave girl hurries by, clutching a large, covered pot. You catch a glimpse of its contents as she passes a magistrate who scowls and moves aside. It's not food. You get a brief, eye-watering hint of ammonia. It's strong, familiar, and utterly out of place. Where is she going with that? And why does that smell, amid all the other smells, seem so purposeful? It's a clue, the first thread in a much larger tapestry. That pot, and its contents, are the key to one of Rome's most vital, yet most mundane, industries. An industry that dealt with the dirt, grime, and sweat of an entire empire. An industry that was about to become your home for the next little while. But for now, you're just a newcomer, overwhelmed and trying to find your bearings in the magnificent, malodorous heart of the ancient world. Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back, not to the battlefield or the emperor's palace, but to the very streets of ancient Rome at the height of its power. You're not a senator or a gladiator tonight, you're just you, and you've just arrived. The first thing that hits you isn't the grandeur of the marble temples, not yet. It's the smell, a complex, layered, and utterly overwhelming wall of odor that is the true essence of a city with over 1 million people crammed into a space meant for a fraction of that. You can taste the air, thick with the smoke of 1,000 cooking fires, the dusty tang of sun-baked stone, the sweet, cloying scent of decaying flowers and offerings left at shrines, and underneath it all, something less poetic, something organic and pungent. This is the reality of urban life before sanitation, before deodorant, before the concept of personal space included a personal bubble of freshness. You probably won't survive a week here without catching some foul ailment, but we're just visiting, and your immune system is safely in the 21st century. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're there, feel free to post your location and local time in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where in the world this little community is drifting off. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of the Suburra, one of Rome's most densely populated and famously aromatic districts. The narrow streets are a chaotic symphony of life. Above you, rickety wooden balconies from multi-story insulae, the ancient apartment blocks, seem to almost kiss across the alleyway, casting everything in a perpetual, shadowy twilight. Lines of laundry, already hinting at our main topic, flap limply in the humid air, not doing much to dry and doing even less to improve the scent profile of the neighborhood. The ground beneath your feet isn't a clean, paved path. It's a treacherous mix of stone and compacted dirt, made slippery by a trickle of water and other, less identifiable liquids making its way down the central gutter. This is your introduction to the eternal city, and it is anything but sterile. You take a hesitant breath, and your nose tries and fails to parse the components. There's the unmistakable barnyard scent of animal dung from the donkeys and mules being used as pack animals, from the occasional chicken or goat being led to market, even from the more exotic sacrifices being hauled towards the forums. There's the salty, metallic smell of blood from the nearby butcher's stall, the earthy rot of vegetables past their prime tossed into the street, and the warm, yeasty aroma of bread from a bakery a few doors down. It's not all bad. In fact, some of it is downright pleasant, but it's the sheer intensity, the overwhelming there-ness of it all that is so jarring. This is a world where smells aren't background notes, they are active, aggressive participants in daily life. And then there's the people. You are jostled by a throng of citizens, slaves, and merchants. A well-dressed patrician, nose wrinkled, holds a small bouquet of herbs or a perfumed ball to his face as his litter-bearers muscle their way through the crowd. He understands the assignment. Everyone here is a contributor to this grand olfactory symphony. The worker sweating in the sun, the fishmonger hawking his wares, the tannery whose acrid stench wafts from a side street. It all mingles together into one great, communal atmosphere. You are breathing in the literal essence of Rome, a cocktail of humanity, industry, and life that is as fascinating as it is foul. Historians still argue whether the average Roman citizen even noticed the smell anymore, having become completely anosmic to it through constant exposure, or if it was a perpetual low-grade annoyance. The price of doing business in the greatest city on earth. You navigate past a crowded cookshop, where a large pot of something hearty and spiced is bubbling away, and the smell is actually welcoming. But right next to it, the open doorway of a cramped apartment building releases a wave of stuffy, lived-in air, the smell of old food, unwashed bodies, and cheap lamp oil. This is the reality for most. The famous Roman aqueducts brought fresh water into the city, an engineering marvel that ended up at magnificent public fountains and the baths of the wealthy. But for the common person living in a tiny top-floor apartment with no plumbing, a bucket of that water was a precious commodity not to be wasted on frivolous things like daily laundering. You're starting to see the problem, aren't you? The need. In a city this crowded, this sweaty, this fragrant, keeping your tunic and toga presentable wasn't a matter of vanity. It was a social and professional necessity. But how? The answer isn't going to be a simple one, and it's going to lead us down some very interesting, aromatic pathways of its own. You pause for a moment, leaning against a sun-warmed wall, and watch the flow of the city. A slave girl hurries by, clutching a large, covered pot. You catch a glimpse of its contents as she passes a magistrate who scowls and moves aside. It's not food. You get a brief, eye-watering hint of ammonia. It's strong, familiar, and utterly out of place. Where is she going with that? And why does that smell, amid all the other smells, seem so purposeful? It's a clue, the first thread in a much larger tapestry. That pot, and its contents, are the key to one of Rome's most vital, yet most mundane, industries. An industry that dealt with the dirt, grime, and sweat of an entire empire. An industry that was about to become your home for the next little while. But for now, you're just a newcomer, overwhelmed and trying to find your bearings in the magnificent, malodorous heart of the ancient world. The fullo gestures you over with a jerk of his head, his expression one of impatient efficiency. There's no time for a formal tour. You learn by immersion here. You step carefully across the perpetually damp, slightly sloped floor, your senses already surrendering to the omnipresent ammonia tang. It's not just a smell anymore. It's the atmosphere itself. This is the heart of the operation. The alchemical laboratory where dirt and grime are systematically defeated through a combination of brute force and surprisingly sophisticated chemistry. He stands before a row of large, deep terracotta vats set into the ground, each one a different stage in the transformative process. Pay attention, he grunts, not unkindly, but with the air of a man who has explained this 1,000 times to slow-witted apprentices. This is where we begin. This is where we break the dirt's will. He points to the first vat. It's empty. Waiting, next to it sits a massive, stooped amphora, the source of that eye-watering vapor you noticed first. The lacinum, he says, tapping the amphora. This is the receiving vessel, the collector of the primary ingredient. You peer inside and the potent fumes make you recoil. It's filled to the brim with a liquid that is very clearly aged human urine. This is the cornerstone of the entire operation, the Roman equivalent of industrial-strength detergent. He explains, matter-of-factly, that it is collected daily from public latrines and the pots placed on street corners. For that very purpose, there's even a tax on it, the vectigal urine, a testament to its immense commercial value. He doesn't see it as waste. He sees it as a precious, active chemical. Let it age, he says, a craftsman discussing his materials. Fresh is no good. It needs to ripen. The smell tells you when it's ready, when it's strong enough to wake the dead. It's perfect for waking the stains out of a woolen cloak. It's your first lesson in fullonic science. Putrefaction equals power. He moves down the line to the next vat, which is filled with this matured, potent liquid. A few garments are submerged in it, soaking. The soak softens everything. He explains, the grease, the dirt, the sweat. It all starts to loosen up. The ammonia does the work. He uses a long wooden pole to poke at a heavy tunic, pushing it further under the surface. The fabric, once a light color, is now a dingy brown in the yellow-tinged solution. It looks worse, not better, but the fullo nods with satisfaction. Good, it's stewing. The process is counterintuitive. To clean something, you first must steep it in what we would consider the absolute pinnacle of filth. It's a paradox that defines the entire trade. Your eyes are drawn to the tools of the trade, hanging on the whitewashed walls, each one stranger than the last. There are stiff bristled brushes made from thorny plants or seta, looking like something you'd use to groom a very stubborn horse. There are curious wooden frames, like small fencing trellises, used for stretching and drying delicate fabrics. But the most bizarre item is a collection of small, pot-bellied clay vessels, each one covered in spikes from top to bottom. They look like ancient maritime mines or the world's most ineffective flower pot. The fullo sees you staring. Ah, the cantharus, he says, a hint of pride in his voice. For later, for the final touch, you'll see. Historians still argue whether these spiked pots were filled with burning sulfur and lowered into the water for bleaching, or if they were simply used as decorative weights or for a different purpose entirely. Their exact function remains one of those delightful little mysteries, a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit. Then there are the additives, the other ingredients in this laundry alchemy. He shows you a bucket of a fine, white clay, Samoan earth, he says, letting the powdery substance run through his fingers, from the island of Comolos, good for absorbing grease, very expensive, for the wealthiest clients. Nothing but the best degreasing agent would do. Next to it is a rougher, more abrasive powder. This is from Sardinia, good for scrubbing the really stubborn stuff, scours the cloth clean. He even has a small pouch of a plant substance called struthium, or fuller's weed, which acts as a natural saponin, a soap. This isn't just a simple Dunkendrans operation. It is a nuanced process with a full arsenal of cleaning agents tailored to the specific textile and the specific type of soil. It's a testament to a developed, if odorously challenging, expertise. The workshop itself is a study in organized chaos. Light filters in from high windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the ammoniac air. The sounds are a symphony of industry. The slosh of liquid, the scrape of brushes, the low talk of the workers. In one corner, a young apprentice is meticulously sorting a new pile of incoming laundry, separating the fine wools from the rougher linens, the lightly soiled from the heavily stained. Each category will receive its own specific treatment. There's a sense of rhythm here, a practiced flow that turns the chaotic mess of dirty laundry into an orderly, albeit pungent, assembly line. You are standing in the engine room of Roman cleanliness, a place where the social imperative to appear pristine collides head-on with the gritty, smelly, and utterly fascinating reality of how that was actually achieved. The fullo claps you on the shoulder, bringing you back to the moment. Enough looking, he says. The vats are ready. It's time for the dance. The fullo's idea of a dance, you quickly realize, involves no music, no grace, and a great deal of very questionable liquid. He leads you to the main event, a series of 3 large, waist-high vats set in a row, each one filled with that now familiar, pungent, amber-tinted solution. This is where the real work happens. This is where the theory of urine soaking meets the practice of pure physical exertion. He hands you a rough, undyed tunic. Put this on, he commands. Your fine clothes will not survive the process. As you change, you watch 2 of his workers, their own tunics hitched up high, step into the first vat. They brace themselves against the sides and begin a rhythmic, stomping motion, their feet churning the contents with a thick, squelching sound. This is it, the famous dance of the fuller, and you're about to join in. But first, a moment to truly appreciate the star of the show. That liquid in the vats isn't just a random collection of waste. It's a carefully curated, aged, and processed chemical agent. The Romans didn't just use urine because it was free and available. They used it because it worked spectacularly well. The key is ammonia. When urine ages, the urea in it breaks down into ammonia gas, which is a powerful alkali. This alkaline solution is a champion at saponification. It turns fats and greases into a crude form of soap, allowing them to be suspended in water and washed away. It's brilliant, really. They turned the body's own waste products into the perfect weapon against the grime and oils that same body produced. It's a closed-loop system of mundane genius. The collection of this chamber pot gold was a highly organized affair. You probably wouldn't have just dumped your pot into the street. Well, most people wouldn't. There was value here. Entrepreneurs would place large clay jars, doya, on street corners, inviting passers-by to contribute to the cause. Public latrines, with their rows of seats overflowing channels, were essentially gold mines, their contents carefully channeled and collected by those in the trade. And yes, the Emperor Vespasian famously placed a tax on the urine collected from these public facilities. When his son Titus expressed disgust at the unsavory nature of the revenue, Vespasian is said to have held a gold coin up to his nose and quipped, "Pecunia non olet," money does not stink. It's one of history's greatest mic-drops, a cheeky defense of a truly bizarre, but lucrative state income. Historians still argue whether the tax was on the sale of the urine itself, or on the pots used for its collection, but the pungent principle remains the same. Now, it's your turn. The fullo points to the third vat. In, start slow. Get a feel for the cloth. You hesitate for only a second before stepping into the liquid. It's cool at first, but not unpleasantly so. The sensation is odd. The texture is slightly thicker than water. The smell is, of course, indescribable. A concentrated wave of that ammoniac punch that you're slowly getting used to. A thought that is itself slightly disturbing. You look down at the mass of wet, heavy woolen garments under your feet. Following the lead of the other workers, you begin to lift your knees high and stomp down, agitating the fabric, forcing the alkaline solution through every fiber. It's exhausting work. The soaked wool is incredibly heavy, and the rhythmic, marching motion uses muscles you didn't know you had. This isn't a gentle swish, it's a brutal, mechanical process designed to mimic the action of a modern washing machine's agitator, but powered by human legs. Up and down, up and down. The workers beside you fall into a steady, meditative rhythm. Their breathing even, their movements economical. They can keep this up for hours. You, on the other hand, are sweating and out of breath in minutes. The fullo watches from the side, arms crossed, offering the occasional tip. Lift from the knees. You're not crushing grapes, you're persuading dirt. The quirky tidbit here is that some smaller, poorer fulleries might have actually used their actual bare feet for this process, but most, like this one, wore special wooden-soled shoes or worked the cloth with their hands and feet, while wearing their tunics to provide some friction and protection. This is the central, undeniable truth of the fullonica. For all the clever chemistry, for all the organized collection and taxation, the core of the operation was backbreaking, smelly, manual labor. The workers, often slaves or lower-class freedmen, would spend their days up to their calves in a vat of what was essentially bottled human waste, stomping the filth out of other people's clothes. It was a vital service that kept Roman society looking pristine and dignified, but it was founded on the most undignified of labors. The contrast is staggering. The senator's spotless, bright white toga, the symbol of his citizenship and moral integrity, began its journey back to cleanliness right here, in this vat, under the stomping feet of a man who smelled powerfully of the very substance that made it pure. It's a paradox that would make any modern laundry detergent commercial short-circuit. You stomp on, the rhythmic splash squelch filling your ears, the ammonia filling your head, becoming a part of the strange, pungent heartbeat of the workshop. Your legs are burning, your lower back is a single, protesting knot of muscle, and the inside of your nose feels permanently cauterized by the ammonia fumes. Just as you think you can't possibly stomp another step, the fullo gives a sharp whistle. Enough. Out. They're ready for the bath. You clamber out of the vat, dripping that distinctively pungent solution onto the already sodden floor. The garments you were stomping, now thoroughly saturated with the cleaning agent and liberated grime, are fished out with long wooden poles, heavy and sagging. They look worse than when they went in, darker, saturated with a dirty, yellowish liquid. But the fullo is pleased. The dirt is loose, he declares. Now we wash it away. This is where the real water flows. You are handed a heavy, sopping wound bundle of wool and directed to follow another worker towards the back of the fullonica. Here, the atmosphere shifts again. The overwhelming ammonia scent is challenged by a new sensation. The clean, humid smell of fresh, moving water. This is the rinsing section, and it's a testament to Roman engineering. A constant, gentle stream of water flows through a series of shallow, sloped channels carved into stone. It's not a torrent, but a steady, managed flow, likely diverted from one of the city's many aqueducts or a dedicated cistern. This is the precious commodity, the final step in purging the filth. The process is methodical and, compared to the violent stomping, almost graceful. You are shown how to kneel by the channel and begin swishing the heavy fabric in the clear, running water. The difference is instantaneous and dramatic. As the water flows through the wool, it carries away the cloudy, yellowed ammonia solution, along with the suspended dirt and grease it had so effectively loosened. The water swirling away from your hands is a disgusting, murky brown, but the garment itself is slowly, miraculously, beginning to reveal its true, lighter color. It's a satisfying, tangible result. You are literally seeing the dirt depart. This isn't a quick dunk, though. It's a thorough, repetitive process. You must agitate the cloth, turn it, squeeze it, and then let the water flow through it again and again until the runoff runs almost clear. It's a battle against the very nature of wool, which loves to hold onto water and everything suspended in it. Your hands are becoming raw and pruned from the constant immersion. The worker next to you, a young man with a surprisingly cheerful demeanor despite his occupation, demonstrates a technique, twisting the fabric into a thick rope and wringing it out with a powerful, practiced motion, sending a shower of dirty water back into the channel. You have to be firm with it, he says, grinning. It's stubborn, like a mule. This step highlights a fascinating and often overlooked aspect of Roman life, their relationship with water. The massive aqueducts are famous for supplying public baths and fountains, but this practical, industrial use of continuous flowing water in a workshop is equally impressive. The water in these channels wasn't for drinking, it was a tool, a utility. Historians still argue about the water pressure and volume available to the average city workshop, and whether smaller fullonicae had to make do with manual bucket-based rinsing from a central well, a far more labor-intensive process. The existence of these built-in channels in the ruins of larger facilities, like the fullonica of Stephanus in Pompeii, shows that for successful businesses, a dedicated water supply for rinsing was a critical investment. Once the rinsing is deemed sufficient, a judgment call made by the fullo, based on the clarity of the water and the feel of the fabric. The next challenge is removing the immense weight of the water itself. This is where the strange wooden frames you saw earlier come into play. The clean, but sopping wet, garment is carefully stretched over a conically shaped frame made of wood and rope. It's pulled, taut, like a hide being prepared for tanning. This serves two purposes. It allows the fabric to dry evenly without shrinking or becoming misshapen, and the tension helps to raise the nap of the wool, restoring its soft, fluffy texture after its brutalizing treatment. The workshop's upper walls are lined with these frames, each one holding a garment in a state of suspended animation, slowly dripping onto the floor below. The final step in the water removal process is the most physically demanding yet. For heavier items like thick cloaks or blankets, simple stretching isn't enough. They need to be wrung out with mechanical force. You are led to a large, wooden contraption that looks like a medieval torture device. It's a press. The wet garment is carefully fed between two heavy rollers, and a large overhead screw is turned by two burly workers, squeezing the rollers together with immense pressure. You can hear the groan of the wood and the sound of a torrent of water being forcibly ejected from the fabric, cascading down into a collection basin below. It's a spectacularly effective, if crude, piece of engineering. The garment that emerges is merely damp, not dripping. Its transformation from a sodden, filthy mass to a clean, manageable textile nearly complete. The worst is over. The smell of ammonia is gone, replaced by the neutral scent of wet wool. But the process isn't finished. The clothes are clean, but for the elite of Rome, clean wasn't enough. They needed to be bright, they needed to be white, and for that, the fullo had one more, truly dramatic trick up his sleeve. The garments are clean. They are damp. They smell, mercifully, only of wet wool. But for the Roman elite, this is only half the job. A toga must not just be clean, it must be a blinding, symbolic white, a canvas of purity and status. The fullo surveys the rows of stretched, pale garments and gives a satisfied nod. Good. The dirt is gone. Now we banish the yellow. Now we bring out the sun. He leads you to the drier, more enclosed corner of the workshop where those strange, spiky canthary pots sit like dormant sea urchins. The air here is different, stiller, with a faint, anticipatory tang of something mineral and volatile. This is where the magic happens, the final, alchemical transformation. An apprentice is carefully preparing the ritual. He takes one of the spiked pots and, using tongs, places a few lumps of raw, yellow sulfur inside it. He then adds a few hot embers from a small brazier, and a faint, bluish flame licks at the sulfur for a moment before it settles into a slow, smoldering burn. A thin, almost invisible wisp of vapor begins to rise from the pot. The smell is immediate and distinctive, the sharp, acidic, match-strike scent of sulfur dioxide. The fullo hands you a damp cloth for your nose. It helps a little. It's a token gesture against what's coming. The apprentice now carries the smoking, spiked pot over to a large, empty terracotta vat. A carefully arranged bundle of the rinsed, damp woolen togas is suspended over the open top of the vat. With a deft motion, the apprentice lowers the smoking cantharus into the bottom of the vat, and another worker immediately covers the top with a heavy lid, trapping the fumes inside. The sulfur dioxide gas, denser than air, fills the confined space, enveloping the suspended garments. You watch, fascinated. There's no dramatic explosion, no cloud of smoke, just a quiet, sinister, chemical process happening out of sight. This is the Roman equivalent of bleach. The sulfur fumes act as a reducing agent, breaking down the colored compounds in the wool that cause yellowing or dullness, effectively bleaching the fabric to a brilliant, almost luminous white. Historians still argue whether the spikes on the cantharus served a practical purpose, perhaps to hold the sulfur lumps in place over the embers, or to allow for more efficient gas emission, or if they were merely decorative, a stylistic flourish. For a common tool, the truth is lost to time, but the effect of the tool is not. After a precisely timed interval, the lid is lifted. A wave of that sharp, choking sulfur smell washes out, making you cough. But as it clears, the worker pulls out one of the togas. The transformation is nothing short of miraculous. The fabric, which moments before was a decent, off-white cream color, is now a stark, brilliant white. It seems to glow in the dim light of the workshop. It's whiter than it could have ever been when it was first woven. The process isn't without its risks. The fullo explains in a matter-of-fact tone that if you leave the fabric in too long, or if the fumes are too concentrated, the sulfur dioxide can react with moisture to form sulfuric acid, which will actually weaken and eventually destroy the wool fibers. It's a delicate balance. Too little, and the yellow remains. Too much, and you've dissolved your client's very expensive garment into a brittle, useless rag. It requires an expert's touch, a feel for the chemistry that comes from years of experience. This is the pinnacle of the fullo's art. He isn't just a cleaner. He's a master of chemical alteration, a whitening wizard. The quirky tidbit here is the almost mystical reverence this process seems to have. There's a ritual to it, the careful preparation of the pod, the precise timing, the unveiling. To a Roman, watching their toga emerge from that foul-smelling vat, it must have seemed like true sorcery. They didn't understand the chemistry of reduction reactions, of course. They just knew that the fullo, through his mysterious methods and his pots of burning yellow rock, could perform a miracle of purification. He could take something clean and make it pure. The garments are laid out now, not in the main work area, but with a newfound respect. They have undergone the final trial. They have been baptized in ammonia and fumigated by sulfur. They are ready for the last touches, the finishing acts that will restore their texture and their dignity before they are returned to their proud owners, who will never truly know the strange and pungent journey their clothing has endured. The garments hang now, brilliant white and smelling faintly of wet stone and the ghost of sulfur. But they are far from finished. They have been through a chemical war and emerged victorious, but battle-scarred. The wool is matted from its soaking and stomping, its fibers crushed and tangled. It feels stiff to the touch, like parchment, not the soft, luxurious textile a patrician would expect to wear. The fullo runs a critical hand over the surface of a toga. The fight is won, he murmurs, but the field is a mess. Now we make it beautiful again. Now we remind the wool what it is meant to be. He leads you to the final workstations, where the true artistry of his trade begins. This is the grooming. The first tool he hands you is one of the strangest yet, a dried, prickly seed pod from a plant called a teasel. It looks like a small, brown, spiky mace. Gently, he instructs, demonstrating on a stretched tunic. You don't tear, you coax. He brushes the teasel head over the surface of the wool in short, flicking motions. The tiny, stiff hooks on the pod catch the individual wool fibers, pulling them upright, loosening the matted clumps and raising a soft, fuzzy nap on the surface. It's a painstaking process, inch by inch, but the effect is immediate. The stiff, lifeless fabric begins to look plush and soft again. It's a transformation of texture, from battered to bolstered. This is the foundation of the finish. But the teasel is just the beginning. For a finer finish, the fullo uses a more specialized tool, a kind of comb or brush with stiff, metal bristles, a prela. This is for the delicate work, for the togas and the finest woolens. The process is almost meditative. He works with a focused intensity, his hands moving with practiced precision, brushing and lifting the nap until the entire surface is a uniform, soft fleece. Historians still argue whether the Romans used actual carding tools similar to those used in spinning for this process, or if it was all done with these brushing and teasing techniques. The evidence is fragmentary, but the goal was clear: to restore the wool's loft and its hand feel, to make it inviting to the touch once more. Once the nap is raised to perfection, there's a new problem. The surface is now too perfect, too fuzzy. A proper Roman toga needed a certain sleekness, a defined finish. This is where the shearing comes in. Another worker brings over a tool that looks disconcertingly like a large, menacing razor set into a wooden handle. It's a novacula, a fuller shear. The fullo takes it and, with the steady hand of a surgeon, begins to skim it across the surface of the raised nap. The blade doesn't cut the main body of the cloth. It shaves the very tips of the raised fibers, creating an impeccably smooth, level surface. Tiny curls of wool, like the finest gossamer, puff into the air and drift away. This is the pinnacle of the craft. The skill required is immense. One slip, one moment of too much pressure, and you've sliced a hole in a client's extremely expensive garment. A financial disaster for the fullo, and a social disaster for the client. The fullo's hands are utterly steady, his movements economical and sure. He is literally sculpting the fabric, defining its final form. The quirky tidbit here is what they did with that waste wool. Those tiny, shaved-off fibers, the lanugo, weren't just swept away. They were collected meticulously. This was premium stuff. It could be used for stuffing pillows and cushions, or even felted into other items. Nothing was wasted. The entire process, from the collection of urine to the collection of wool fluff, was a masterpiece of efficiency. After shearing, the garment is inspected under the best light available, held up to a high window. The fullo looks for any missed spots, any unevenness in the nap, any lingering stain that might have survived the sulfur treatment. Satisfied, he gives it one final, ritualistic touch. From a small, precious flask, he sprinkles a few drops of a thin, white liquid, a mixture of water and his special, fine white clay called creta fullonica onto the garment. He then rubs it in with a soft cloth. This isn't a cleaning agent, it's a cosmetic. It gives the white wool an even brighter, more opaque appearance, a final boost of visual purity. It's the ancient equivalent of optical brighteners in modern detergent, a final trick of the light to make the white seem whiter than white. The garment is now complete. It has been through the entire cycle, from filth to chemistry, from brutality to meticulous artistry. It smells not of ammonia or sulfur, but of nothing. It is brilliantly, blindingly white. It is soft and smooth to the touch. It is, for all intents and purposes, reborn. The fullo folds it with a kind of reverence and places it on a growing pile of finished work. He looks at it not with pride, but with the quiet satisfaction of a problem solved, a job well done. This pile represents his livelihood, his reputation, and his place in the complex, smelly, and utterly essential machinery of Roman life. The clothes are ready to go back out into the world, to be worn in the forum, to be seen at the baths, to project an image of flawless cleanliness and high status. An image that was born in vats of urine, perfected by stomping feet, and finished with the steady hand of a master. You stand amidst the piles of finished, impossibly white garments, the result of so much brutal, smelly, and meticulous labor. The fullo wipes his clay-dusted hands on his already stained tunic and gives you an appraising look. "So," he says, his voice a low rumble, "you've seen the magic. Now you should see the money." He gestures round the bustling workshop, not just at the vats and tools, but at the flow of it all, the incoming dirty laundry, the outgoing pristine packages, the constant movement of workers and client slaves. This isn't a charity. This is an empire of dirt. And business is good. He isn't exaggerating. The fullo who owns an operation of this size is not a poor man. Think of him not as a lowly washerman, but as the owner of a vital, industrial-scale service provider. He is a businessman, and his product is cleanliness itself, a commodity in constant, desperate demand in a city of 1,000,000 sweaty, grimy souls. The clients for an establishment like this aren't the commoners from the suburban apartments. They are the wealthy, the patricians, the merchants who need to maintain a facade of impeccable respectability, and they pay accordingly. A perfectly whitened, brushed, and shorn toga doesn't come cheap. The fees are likely based on the garment's value, the level of soiling, and the complexity of the work. That pile of finished goods represents a significant inflow of sestertii, but the revenue is only one side of the ledger scratched onto his wax tablets. The costs are substantial. First and foremost, there's the special ingredient. While some might collect their own, an operation of this scale needs a reliable, bulk supply of aged urine. He likely has a contract with the collectors who service the public latrines, a business arrangement that would make a modern accountant blink. He pays the vectigal urinae, the urine tax, either directly or through his suppliers. Then there's the water. While the aqueducts provide public water for free, accessing a dedicated flow for his rinsing channels might involve fees or, more likely, a well-placed bribe to the right official. Add to that the cost of fuel for the sulfur pots, the expensive imported Simoleon earth, the tools, the maintenance of the vats and presses, and most significantly, the payroll. The workers. You look at the men stomping in the vats, the apprentices brushing and shearing. They are the engine of this empire, and their lives exist in a different economic reality. Many are slaves, their labor a fixed cost for their owner. Others are freeborn but poor, paid a meager wage for backbreaking, socially stigmatized work. The fullo might provide them with a simple tunic and a daily meal of bread and pulse, but their existence is a world away from the clients whose clothes they clean. The social hierarchy here is stark and fascinating. The fullo himself occupies a curious, ambiguous rung on the ladder. He is wealthy from a trade that is physically repulsive. He handles the garments of the elite and is necessary for their social performance. Yet he is undoubtedly looked down upon by those very elites for the source of his wealth. Historians still argue whether a successful fullo could ever achieve true social respectability, or if the smell of the trade, both literal and metaphorical, forever clung to him and his descendants. There are other risks, too. This is a business built on trust, Clients are leaving their valuable possessions. A fine wool toga could cost a small fortune. In the care of a man who steeps them in vats of urine, the potential for disputes is enormous. What if a garment is torn during the violent stomping? What if a clumsy apprentice, using the shearing razor, slices a hole in a priceless cloak? What if a garment goes missing? The fullo likely had to post some form of financial guarantee or bond, and his reputation would be everything. A single scandal could ruin him. The quirky tidbit here is that some larger fullonicae might have also acted as informal banks or pawn shops. A client might leave a valuable item as collateral against the cleaning bill, or even pay for the cleaning of one item by surrendering another, older one. The workshop became a nexus, not just of hygiene, but of commerce and credit. You see a young, well-dressed man enter the workshop, holding his nose delicately with 2 fingers. He's clearly a slave from a wealthy household, his demeanor brimming with a borrowed haughtiness. He points to a finished, folded toga. "My master, Lucius Aemilius, expects that before the calends," he says, his voice implying that the fullo should be grateful for the opportunity. The fullo doesn't kowtow. He simply nods, checks his wax tablet, and says, "It will be ready. The account will be settled as usual." His tone is that of one businessman to another's servant. There's a quiet power in it. He has something they need. He provides an indispensable service. In the complex economy of Rome, the man who can make the dirt disappear holds a certain kind of leverage. He turns back to you, a wry smile on his face. "Everyone looks down on the man who handles their dirt," he says, as if reading your thoughts. "But they always come back. They always need us. And they always pay." It's a powerful reminder that even the most mundane, unpleasant tasks can be the foundation of wealth and influence in a society that depends on them. The fullo's comment about everyone needing him hangs in the ammoniac air, a statement of fact as solid as the stone vats around you. But his work isn't limited to the soiled garments of the wealthy. He sees you watching the flow of the workshop and nods toward a far corner, separated from the main laundry operation by a low wall. "You think that's all we do? Cleaning the rich man's sweat? That's just the finished product. We also handle the raw material." He leads you over, and a new, entirely different wave of scent hits you. It's earthy, musky, and profoundly organic. The smell of the farm, not the city. This is where the process truly begins, long before a tunic ever gets dirty. This is where they process raw wool. Piled high in this section are great, loose, greasy bundles of wool, freshly shorn from sheep. It looks nothing like the soft, clean yarn you might imagine. It's dense, matted with dirt and straw, and gleaming with a thick, yellowy grease called suint, the sheep's own natural lanolin. This is the unrefined ore, and the fullo's workshop is the smelter that will turn it into something usable. "The weavers bring it to us straight from the shepherd," he explains. "They can't work with it like this. It's our job to make it spinnable. The first step is the same as for the dirty laundry, but somehow even more visceral. The greasy, filthy wool is shoved into large vats, and the same aged urine solution is poured over it. The goal here isn't to remove city grime, but to degrease the fibers, to break down and emulsify that thick, sticky lanolin that binds the dirt and straw to the fleece. Workers use long paddles to submerge the masses of wool, and you watch as the liquid instantly clouds with a disgusting, yellow-brown grease. The smell is a bizarre combination of ammonia and barnyard. It's the pungent world of the fullo colliding head-on with the pastoral world of the shepherd. Once the grease is loosened by the alkaline urine bath, the wool undergoes its own version of the stomping. Workers, often the lowest-ranking apprentices, climb into the vats and tread the wool, not just to agitate it, but to felt it slightly, to start matting the fibers together into a more manageable state. It's even messier work than the laundry stomping. The greasy, dirty water clings to everything. After its thorough cleansing, the wool is hauled out and subjected to an even more vigorous rinsing in the flowing channels, until the water runs clear and the wool, while still damp and heavy, is free of its natural filth and grease. But the process isn't over. The cleaned wool is then spread out on large, slatted tables. Here, workers wearing protective leather gloves, a rare concession to the difficulty of the task, begin the arduous job of teasing it apart. Their fingers pull and separate the tangled mass, drawing out the fibers, removing any remaining bits of vegetable matter or stubborn dirt. It's a slow, painstaking process. Eventually, they use a tool called a cardus, a handheld paddle set with fine, metal teeth. They place small clumps of wool on one paddle and comb it through with the other, gradually aligning the fibers into a smooth, continuous web. This web can then be rolled off into a loose, rope-like strand called a roving. ready for the spinner to draw out and twist into yarn. Historians still argue whether the fullers used the same urine vats for both raw wool and laundry, or if they maintained separate facilities to avoid contaminating the raw material with the urban filth from the clothes. The economics suggest they probably used the same vats, perhaps with a rigorous cleaning in between. But the thought of a senator's toga being washed in the same solution that just degreased a filthy sheep's fleece is a wonderfully ironic one. The quirky tidbit here is the fate of that washed-away lanolin. That grease wasn't just waste. It would rise to the top of the rinsing channels or be skimmed from the vats. This purified lanolin was a valuable commodity in its own right, sold to perfumers, healers for ointments, and even to other fullers who might use it to dress leather or as a waterproofing agent. Nothing, absolutely nothing, was wasted. You watch as a worker carries a basket of this newly carded, clean, and fluffy wool roving to a waiting woman, a spinner, who has been patiently waiting in the doorway. She feels the quality of the wool, nods her approval, and hands over a few coins to the fullo. The transaction is complete. The cycle is closed. The fullo has taken nature's messy product and refined it into an industrial material. He's not just in the business of cleaning. He's in the business of transformation, taking the raw, greasy bounty of the countryside and turning it into the very foundation of Roman clothing, the first link in a chain that will eventually lead back to his vats when that clothing, in turn, becomes soiled. His workshop is both the beginning and the end of the story of Roman cloth, a perpetual motion, machine of cleanliness fueled by urine and human effort. The rhythmic, small-scale stomp of the urban fullonica fades behind you as the fullo leads you out of his workshop and into the blinding afternoon sun of the Roman street. "You've seen a craftsman's shop," he says, a hint of something like competitive pride in his voice. "Now you should see an empire's factory. Your journey isn't long. You are led down to the Tiber River, where a barge laden with bales of what looks like dirty wool and piles of folded, soiled linens is being loaded. This is the supply line. You board, and the slow, steady pull of the current carries you away from the heart of Rome, toward its mouth, toward the sea, toward Ostia, disembarking at the bustling port. The atmosphere is instantly different from the cramped intensity of the Suburra here. The air is laced with salt and the tang of fish, of spices from across the world, of damp wood and tar, and cutting through it all, familiar yet magnified to an industrial scale, is the same ammoniac scent you've come to know. It doesn't waft from a single doorway here. It hangs over an entire district, a permanent, pungent haze. You follow the smell, and it leads you to a building that dwarfs any workshop you've yet seen. This isn't a fullonica. This is the fullonica of Stephanus, a laundry leviathan. You step through a wide, arched entranceway, not into a single room, but into a vast, open courtyard surrounded by a two-story colonnade. The noise is a roaring cacophony, 100 stomping feet splashing in unison. The constant gush of water from multiple channels, the shouted orders of foremen, the groan of large wooden presses. Dozens of workers, a small army of them, move with a relentless, synchronized efficiency. This is cleaning on a scale you couldn't have imagined. The piles of incoming laundry are not mere bundles. They are small mountains of soiled fabric, the collective grime of a busy port city, of the warehouses, the ship's crews, the thousands of souls passing through. The process is the same in principle: soak, stomp, rinse, treat, finish, but everything is amplified, mechanized, and optimized for sheer volume. The soaking vats are massive, sunken pools. The stomping isn't done by individuals in small vats. Here workers line the edges of large, shallow basins holding onto ropes overhead for balance, as they march and place together a regiment of cleaners, churning through the filthy slurry beneath their feet. It's a mesmerizing, almost hypnotic sight, a brutal ballet of purification. The water channels aren't simple gutters. They are engineered canals directing a continuous flow of fresh water from Ostia's aqueduct through a series of rinsing basins, where teams of workers swish and wring garments with assembly line speed. The finishing area is its own dedicated factory floor. Rows of stretching frames hold dozens of tunics and togas at once, like a field of strange, woolen flowers. The brushing and shearing stations are manned by specialists who perform only one task, over and over, their movements so practiced they seem automatic. The sulfur bleaching happens in a dedicated, well-ventilated room where multiple pots smolder simultaneously under large, lidded vats, their acrid smoke venting through high windows. The quirky tidbit here is the sheer number of specialized roles. There are urine captors, urine collectors, loaders, washers, pressers, press operators, and effectors, dyers or finishers. A worker might spend his entire life just stomping in a vat, never learning to shear or brush. He is a cog in a vast, malodorous machine. This scale speaks to a different economic reality. The owner of this operation, the mysterious Stephanus whose name is inscribed at the entrance, isn't just a wealthy craftsman. He is an industrialist, a magnet of filth. His clientele isn't individual patricians, but entire shipping magnates needing to clean their sails and crew's uniforms, wealthy merchants cleaning the woolens and linens from their warehouses, and the city itself, requiring services on a municipal level. The profits would be staggering, but so too would the overhead, the cost of feeding and housing a small army of workers, the vast quantities of urine and water required, the maintenance of the immense facility. Historians still argue whether these massive fullonicae were primarily owned by wealthy freedmen, exploiting a trade the old aristocracy found distasteful, or if they were passive investments for the elite, who put up the capital but left the smelly day-to-day management to others. Walking through this organized chaos, it feels like the latter. You can't imagine a senator spending his afternoons here, but you can absolutely imagine him taking a hefty cut of the profits. The social world here is different, too. The workers are likely almost entirely slaves, their lives defined by the relentless, monotonous, and physically punishing rhythm of the work. The foremen, armed with short whips, patrol the lines, ensuring the pace never slackens. This isn't a place of craft and artistry, it's a place of production and output. You look up at the second-story colonnade that rings the courtyard. This is where the administrative work would have been done, the record-keeping, the contracts, the payments. It's a world away from the splash and stink below. From that balcony, the owner or his manager could look down and survey his entire malodorous empire, watching the river of dirty cloth become a river of clean, ready-to-wear profit. It's a powerful testament to Roman practicality and their relentless drive for efficiency. Even in the most unexpected of industries, they industrialized cleanliness itself, building an empire of soap, powered by urine and human toil, on a scale that wouldn't be seen again for over a millennium. The smell is the same, but the ambition is exponentially greater. The colossal, rhythmic stomping of the Ostian fullonica fades from your ears, but the memory of its industrial hum lingers. The fullo from the smaller city workshop guides you back from the port, the familiar, more contained cacophony of his own domain now feeling almost intimate by comparison. As you step back through the doorway into the ammoniac embrace of his fullonica, your perspective has shifted. You no longer see just a production line of clean clothes. You see a nucleus. The fullo reads your expression and gives a knowing smirk. You see it now, don't you? He says. It's not just a workshop. It is the town square for those of us who don't have time for the forum. He's right. Now that you know what to look for, the social undercurrents of the place are impossible to ignore. The workshop isn't just a place of work, it's a community hub, a news agency, and a networking event all rolled into one. A constant, low stream of people flows in and out, and not all of them are just dropping off or picking up laundry. A well-dressed man, a local merchant by the look of him, leans against a dry section of wall, deep in conversation with the fullo's head press operator. They're discussing the price of grain, the arrival of a new shipment from Alexandria. The fullo himself is interrupted by a woman, a baker's wife, who quickly asks his opinion on a property dispute with her neighbor, before handing over a bundle of her husband's flour-dusted tunics. This is where deals are made, gossip is exchanged, and the pulse of the neighborhood is taken. The fullo, by the very nature of his trade, is one of the best-connected men in the district. Everyone, from the highest-ranking civil servant to the lowest street vendor, eventually brings their dirty laundry to him. He sees the state of their clothes, which tells its own story. A grass-stained tunic from a day at the races, the fine dust of a long journey on a cloak, the expensive wine stain on a senator's finest dinner where he is a silent confidant to the private lives of his clients. He knows who is prospering, who is cutting corners, and who might be in financial trouble. His workshop is a clearinghouse of information, and information is power. You watch as a young man, clearly nervous, enters and approaches the fullo. He's not carrying laundry. He's looking for work. The fullo looks him up and down, asks him a few terse questions, and then has him try his hand at wringing out a freshly rinsed tunic. It's a job interview, conducted right there on the damp floor. The fullo isn't just a businessman. He's a patron, a provider of livelihoods for the men who work. For him, the social bonds here are tangible. The workers, despite the miserable nature of the job, seem to have a certain camaraderie. They shout jokes to each other over the splash of the vats. They complain about sore muscles, They share a simple meal of bread and cheese during a brief break. They are united by the shared, smelly hardship of their task. And then there are the clients. A slave from a wealthy house arrives, his nose wrinkled in distaste as he always does. He's there to collect his master's togas. The fullo's chief finisher, a burly man with surprisingly delicate hands, brings them out, folded perfectly. The slave's haughty demeanor vanishes for a moment as he inspects the work, his fingers tracing the impeccable shirring on a toga's hem. He can't help but nod, impressed. "My master will be pleased," he says, his tone slightly less condescending. It's a tiny moment of respect, earned through undeniable skill. The fullo might be looked down upon socially, but his expertise commands a certain acknowledgement, however grudging. Historians still argue about the exact social standing of the fullo. But standing here, watching these interactions, it becomes clear that it was fluid and context-dependent. To the elite senator, he was a necessary utility, a faceless service provider. To the workers in his shop, he was the boss, the authority. To the local merchants and tradesmen, he was a peer, a fellow businessman, and a valuable source of neighborhood intelligence. The quirky tidbit is that this role as an information hub might have even extended to the political sphere. In a city like Rome, where public opinion was everything, a man who heard the unfiltered gossip of every social class could be a very valuable informant. For those in power, was the fullo just a listener, or did he sometimes pass along what he heard? The afternoon wears on. The light from the high windows softens, the flow of people slows. The fullo takes a final lap around his domain, checking on the progress of the last vats of the day. He stops to share a laugh with an old man who has come to collect a cleaned blanket, clapping him on the back like an old friend. The social function of the workshop is as vital as its economic one. It's a place of connection, a constant, buzzing intersection of lives. In a vast, anonymous city, your fullo was one of the few people who knew you, not by your family name or your political office, but by the dirt on your collar. He was a fixture, a constant, the man who knew your secrets, literally and figuratively, and who, for the right price, would keep them buried under a mountain of suds and ammonia. The clothes get clean, but the real business of the fullonicae is the business of people. The fullo's world, for all its organized routine, is a precarious one. He operates on trust and a reputation for flawless execution. But you've been here long enough to know that in a process this physical, this chemical, and this dependent on fallible human hands, things can, and do, go wrong. The fullo's easygoing demeanor vanishes instantly when one of his senior workers approaches him, holding a tunic with a grim expression. The garment, a fine white wool, is now adorned with a long, jagged, and unmistakable tear right down the front. The air around the two men grows tense. This isn't just a mistake, it's a financial disaster waiting to happen. The press, the worker mutters, his voice low. The screw was over-tightened. The wood splintered. The fullo closes his eyes for a second, a muscle in his jaw twitching. He takes the garment and examines the damage. It's not just a simple seam rip. It's a catastrophic failure of the fabric, impossible to mend invisibly. The tunic is, for all intents and purposes, ruined, and it's an expensive one. Who does it belong to? He asks, his voice dangerously calm. The worker consults a wax tablet. The merchant, Gaius Oppius, the one who always complains about the price. The fullo sighs. Of course, not a forgiving man. This is the nightmare scenario. The client will demand compensation, and the law is almost certainly on his side. The Romans had a well-developed concept of liability for artisans and service providers. A fullo was expected to exercise diligently the care of a reasonable, skilled professional. A mishap like this would be seen as a clear failure of that duty. The client could sue for the full value of the garment, and probably win. For a smaller workshop, a single such incident could be crippling. The fullo barks an order to find the apprentice who was operating the press. The boy will be fined, punished, perhaps even beaten. But the financial liability remains with the master. But tears are just one type of catastrophe. There are subtler, more insidious failures. A young apprentice nervously approaches, holding up a once vibrant blue cloak. The color is now patchy and faded, with strange, whitish blotches marring the fabric. The fullo groans. He used the sulfur pot on a dyed garment, didn't he? The apprentice nods, terrified. The sulfur fumes that brilliantly bleach white wool are utterly catastrophic for most eyes, bleaching them right out. It's a basic, rookie mistake. The quirky tidbit here is what they might have tried to do to fix it. There is some evidence that fullers might have attempted to red-eye the garment themselves to cover their error, or even employed a clever bit of deception. claiming the original dye was of poor quality and bled during the cleaning process. It was a risky gambit, as a knowledgeable client would see right through it. Then there's the simple, age-old problem of lost laundry. A client's slave is at the counter, his voice rising in agitation. He's here to collect his master's to best tunics. The fullo checks his records. They were received, logged, and processed. But somewhere between the rinsing channels and the finishing frames, they have vanished. The workers are questioned. Did they get mixed in with another batch? Were they mistakenly given to the wrong client? Or was it something more nefarious? Theft was a constant concern. A fine wool tunic was a valuable asset, easily sold on the informal market. The fullo has to navigate the situation carefully, balancing the need to placate an angry client with the need to maintain morale and trust among his workers. Accusations could be explosive. Historians still argue about the precise legal mechanisms for resolving these disputes. Was there a standard contract? Did the fullo post a bond against such losses? Were there professional arbiters who specialized in trade disputes? The records are sparse. We know such conflicts happened. Roman jurists like Ulpian discussed the liability of fullers in their writings, but the day-to-day resolution likely involved a messy combination of legal threats, negotiated settlements, and reputational damage control. A fullo's success depended as much on his skill in managing crises as it did on his skill in managing stains. You watch as the fullo deals with the merchant's torn tunic. He doesn't rage. He thinks. He sends a worker to fetch a sample of a similar, high-quality wool from his stock for processing raw fleece. He then calls over his most skilled finisher. "We cannot mend it," he says, "so we will replace it. Take this sample, have it woven and finished to match exactly. We will eat the cost. It is cheaper than the lawsuit and the loss of his business." It's a decision made with cold, calculating business sense. The scandal, however, is not so easily contained. For the next week, the story of Gaius Appius' tunic and the fullo's press will be the hottest gossip in the workshop, a cautionary tale told to every new apprentice about the price of carelessness. The fullo's reputation has taken a hit, one that will only be repaired by weeks of flawless, uninterrupted service. The margin for error, you realize, is terrifyingly thin. The crisis of the torn tunic is averted, replaced by the quiet, grinding reality of the work itself. The initial novelty has long since worn off for you. Your back aches with a deep, familiar soreness. Your hands are raw and pruned from constant immersion, and the smell of ammonia feels less like an invasion and more like a second skin you can shed. You watch the workers, really watch them, and you begin to see the physical toll this trade exacts. The fullo may be the businessman, the master of this malodorous domain, but these men are its engine, and the work is slowly, inexorably, breaking them down. Look at their feet. It's the first thing you notice. The men who spend their days in the stomping vats don't just have calluses. Their feet are a landscape of hardened, whitened, perpetually wet skin, wrinkled and softened by the alkaline solution, yet tough as leather. Their ankles are thick and strong from the constant, weighted lifting, but their knees often bow slightly outward, bearing the strain of years of that unnatural, marching motion. Their lower backs are a common source of complaint. You hear them groaning as they straighten up after a long session in the vats, rubbing at the base of their spines with grimaced expressions. This is a life of chronic, low-grade pain, a physical tax paid daily for the privilege of cleaning other people's clothes. Then there are the hands. The men at the rinsing channels, like you, have hands that are permanently waterlogged, the pads of their fingers soft and ridged. The finishers, the men who brush and shear, have a different set of ailments. Their shoulders and wrists are often swollen from the repetitive, precise motions. A slip of the shearing razor could mean a ruined garment, but the constant, careful pressure to avoid such a slip takes its own toll, leading to stiffness and arthritis over time. Their eyes, too, must suffer, straining in the often dim light, to spot imperfections, to judge the exact moment to stop the sulfur bleaching before it destroys the fibers. This is not a trade that allows for a comfortable old age. A retired fuller would likely be a man carrying a catalog of aches, pains, and respiratory issues. But the physical toll is only part of the price. There is the social stain, and it is as pervasive as the smell. You see it in the way the workers are treated when they occasionally venture out into the city on an errand. They move through the crowds with a slight stoop, not just of fatigue, but of habit, as if trying to make themselves smaller, less noticeable. People give them a wide berth. It's not outright hostility, most of the time, but a clear, unspoken acknowledgement of their otherness. They smell of the trade. They always will. No matter how much they wash, the faint, ghostly scent of ammonia, and lanolin seems to have seeped into their very pores, a permanent olfactory badge of their profession. This smell defines their place in the world. They cannot escape it. It dictates where they can live, likely in cramped quarters near the workshop, in neighborhoods where such smells are commonplace. It dictates who will socialize with them. You won't find a fuller being invited to an elegant dinner party, unless it's to clean up after it. Their marriages would likely be arranged within their own social and professional circle. What freeborn woman's family would welcome a son-in-law who carried the perpetual scent of a urinal? Historians still argue about the possibility of social mobility, but the evidence suggests that the stigma was hard to escape. The son of a fuller might become a fuller, or he might manage to apprentice into a slightly less malodorous trade. But the taint, both literal and figurative, likely followed the family for generations. The quirky tidbit, the small moment of humanity amidst the hardship, is what they do to cope. In the brief breaks, when the fullo allows them a moment to rest and eat their simple meal of bread, olives, and watered-down wine, they become themselves again. They joke with each other, their laughter loud and rough, often at the expense of their snooty clients. They complain about their aches and pains, a shared misery that binds them. They share gossip they've overheard. In these moments, they are not just the help. They are a community, united by a common, smelly burden. They find pride in their expertise, in the knowledge that they can perform a miracle of transformation that no one else can or wants to do. You see an older worker, his back permanently stooped, showing a young apprentice the exact angle to hold the teasel pod to raise the nap, without snagging the thread. The knowledge is being passed down, a legacy of skill in a despised but essential trade. There is dignity here, even if the outside world refuses to see it. It's a dignity earned through painstaking labor and physical sacrifice. As the day's end finally approaches, the workers don't leave with a spring in their step. They move slowly, warily, their bodies telling the story of the day's labors. They will go home to short nights of fitful sleep on hard beds, their muscles protesting, only to wake and do it all over again tomorrow. They are the invisible, aching, stinking foundation upon which Roman cleanliness and, by extension, Roman social order is built, and as they file out, you realize you will never smell ammonia again without thinking of the cost it carried. The final garment of the day, a senator's toga, is folded with a ritualistic precision by the fullo himself. The rough, calloused hands that directed the stomping and managed the sulfur pots are now surprisingly delicate, ensuring every crease is sharp, every drape perfect. He places it gently into a woven basket lined with a clean linen cloth. This is the moment of delivery, the culmination of all that effort, all that smell, all that risk. The transformation is complete. The basket doesn't hold a piece of clothing. It holds a symbol, a statement, a carefully constructed piece of social armor. You are tasked with carrying it, following a senior apprentice through the winding streets back to the domus of the senator who owns it. The journey feels different now. You are no longer just an observer. You are a participant in the final act of this ritual. The basket you carry is light, but its contents are heavy with meaning. You pass through the suburra where the air is still thick with the smells of cooking and life, but now you smell only the faint clean scent of the wool and the last whisper of sulfur that clings to it. You have crossed over. You are now part of the mechanism that allows this city to function, that allows a man to stand in the forum and project an image of flawless purity. The apprentice walks with a certain swagger, a pride in the product he is delivering. He knows the value of what he carries. You arrive at a large, imposing door set in a high wall. A slave answers, his expression one of bored efficiency. He glances into the basket, gives a curt nod, and takes it from you without a word. There is no thank you. The transaction is impersonal. The service has been rendered. The account will be settled later. The door closes, shutting you out of that world of wealth and privilege. The toga's journey, which began in a vat of urine and was perfected by aching hands, is now over. It will be presented to its owner, who will put it on without a thought to the incredible, pungent odyssey it has undergone. To him, it is simply clean. To you, it is a miracle of mundane alchemy. This is the fundamental paradox of the fullo's trade. His work is designed to be invisible. The better he is at his job, the less his clients have to think about him. The goal is to erase all evidence of the process. There should be no lingering smell, no stiff texture, no hint of the chemicals or the labor that restored the garment. The senator's dignity depends on the fullo's work being utterly undetectable. He can only stand as a paragon of Roman virtue and cleanliness because a man standing calf-deep in fermented waste made it possible. The social order is maintained by a foundation of willful ignorance and repressed sensory reality. And yet, the results are everywhere. You start to see them as you walk back through the city. The crisp, white toga of a magistrate hurrying to a meeting. The bright, clean tunic of a wealthy merchant arguing with a supplier. The pristine linen of a priestess on her way to make an offering. You cannot unsee it now. Every spotless garment is a story, a testament to a hidden world of industry. You see a group of young, fashionable men. Their clothes impeccably clean and bright, their hair perfectly arranged. They are the height of Roman style. You wonder if they know that the key to their look was a vat of aged urine, and the stomping feet of a slave. Probably not. And if they did, they would likely prefer to forget it. Historians still argue about how much the average Roman actually knew or thought about the process. Did they simply accept clean clothes as a given, a service provided like any other? Or was the knowledge of the fullones' methods a common, if politely unmentioned, fact of life? The poets and satirists certainly made jokes about it, so the knowledge was in the air, much like the smell. But for the elite, there was likely a conscious effort to disassociate the final product from the process, to enjoy the benefit while ignoring the unpleasant means of its achievement. It's a cognitive dissonance that feels remarkably modern. The quirky tidbit, the final absurd twist, is what happens when the system fails. Imagine the scandal if a senator, standing to give a crucial speech in the forum, were to have a faint, unmistakable whiff of ammonia emanating from his immaculately white toga, or if the sulfur smell was too strong, making people's eyes water as he passed. The social humiliation would be absolute. His dignity, his auctoritas, would dissolve faster than a grease stain in a vat of lye. The fullo responsible would be ruined. This constant, terrifying possibility is the ghost that haunts every fullonica. The final check on the quality of work. The margin for error isn't just financial, it's social. A single olfactory mistake could topple a reputation. You return to the workshop as the sun begins to set. The fullo is making his final rounds. The day's tension easing from his shoulders. The vats are still. The channels run clear. The finished garments are all delivered. The workshop is quiet, save for the dripping of water and the soft scuff of a broom as an apprentice sweeps the floor. The smell is fading, settling back into the stones until tomorrow. The cycle is complete. The dirt of Rome has been processed, transformed, and returned to its owners as a badge of honor. You stand there, exhausted, smelling of a day you will never forget, and you understand the true product of the fullonica. It isn't clean clothes, it's illusion. It's the beautiful, necessary, and profoundly strange illusion of purity, bought and paid for with the raw, unfiltered reality of human filth. The workshop is quiet now. The last of the workers has trudged home, his footsteps echoing faintly in the emptying street. The fullo is alone, making a final notation on his wax tablet. By the light of a single, flickering oil lamp, the day's accounts are settled. The vats, still damp, sit empty and silent. The smell, that constant, aggressive presence, has retreated. It's still here, of course sealed into the very plaster of the walls, soaked into the wooden floors, but it's dormant. It's a sleeping giant, for a few hours. The fullonica is at peace. You stand with him in the quiet, the immense, exhausting cycle of the day finally complete. It's in this stillness that the true scale of what you've witnessed sinks in. This wasn't just about cleaning clothes, it was a system, a complex, self-sustaining, and remarkably efficient ecosystem that perfectly mirrored the Roman world itself. It was pragmatic to the point of brutality, ingenious in its use of available resources, and utterly unconcerned with modern sensibilities. They took the most basic human waste and built an entire industry upon it. They taxed it. They regulated it. They turned it into a commodity that supported families, enriched businessmen, and maintained the social fabric of the most powerful empire the world had ever known. There's a grim, undeniable genius to it. Think of the logistics, the collection networks funneling urine from public latrines and street bots, the transportation of that liquid gold to the workshops, the sourcing of special clays from distant islands, of sulfur from volcanic mines, of teasels from the countryside, the management of a dedicated water supply, the training of a skilled workforce in a complex, multi-stage chemical and mechanical process, the establishment of legal frameworks for liability and quality control, the development of a thriving, if malodorous, export business for the byproducts like lanolin. This was not a dark age of ignorance. This was a highly sophisticated, industrialized process for dealing with one of urban life's most fundamental problems, grime. And yet, for all its sophistication, it was built on a foundation of sheer, back-breaking human effort. The sophistication of the system did not spare the individual from the stomping vat, from the raw hands, from the aching back. The Roman genius was often for designing systems that efficiently organized human suffering to produce a desired result. The gleaming white toga was the product of that suffering, a symbol of purity born from a world of stench and strain. It's the ultimate contradiction. Historians still argue about the broader legacy of the Roman fullers. Did their methods continue in some form into the Middle Ages? Did any of their chemical knowledge survive? In a direct sense, probably very little. The industrial scale and organization died with the empire. But in another sense, their legacy is the very idea of a professional cleaning class, of turning the maintenance of cleanliness from a domestic chore into a specialized urban trade. They established the principle that cleanliness has a price, and that price is often paid by someone else in a place you'd rather not think about. The fullo blows out the lamp. The workshop is plunged into darkness, the shapes of the vats and presses becoming hulking shadows. He leads you out, locking the door behind him. The street is empty. Above, a few stars are visible through the haze of smoke and steam that always hangs over Rome. He turns to you and offers a rare, tired smile. So, he says, now you know how the world really gets clean. It's not a question, it's a statement. He nods once and melts away into the night, heading toward his own home, his own family, perhaps a bath if he can afford the water, trying to wash the day away from his own skin, knowing it never truly leaves. You are left alone in the quiet street, the immense, mundane, malodorous machinery of Roman hygiene shut down for the night, its secrets now yours to carry. The images of the bustling, reeking fullonica begin to soften at the edges, the sharp smells of ammonia and sulfur fading into the gentle, imagined scent of night-blooming flowers outside a window, left slightly ajar. The rhythmic, squelching stomp of the worker slows, its cadence becoming the distant, soothing rhythm of a heartbeat, steady and calm. The brilliant, almost aggressive white of the finished togas softens to a muted, moonlit glow, a gentle luminance in the mind's eye. All the frantic energy, the complex logistics, the social strife, it all settles, like dust in a sunbeam after the chaos has passed. You have journeyed through the gritty, necessary underbelly of an entire civilization, and you have seen its strange, smelly, magnificent ingenuity. There is a comfort in knowing how things work, even or especially the mundane things. There is a dignity in the work, a quiet pride in the system, however imperfect. All that effort, all that daily struggle was in service of a simple, universal desire, to feel fresh, to present a clean self to the world, to start anew. And now, that day is done, for the fullo, for his workers, for the entire city of Rome. The labor is over. The clatter of looms and the shouts in the forum have ceased. The last notes of music from a distant banquet have faded. The world is quiet, resting, restoring itself. The great machine of empire is sleeping. And so now, you can let it all go. Release the details. Let the history become a soft, blurry painting. There is no more work to be done here tonight. There is only the gentle, welcoming dark, the soft weight of the covers, and the deep, knowing peace that comes from understanding, finally, that everything is taken care of. All is well. The city sleeps. You can sleep too. Let your breath become slow and deep, matching that quiet, nocturnal rhythm. Drift away from the waking world, and into dreams of quiet streets and starlit skies.